Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius podcast. Socius, welcome back to another episode. Today we've got George Hanna. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
George is from HDIT, and naturally a synergy that we've always shared. And naturally, we're in the business of risk outside of the Socius. And cyber risk is one of those things we always consider, but just managing IT generally is something that, is super relevant for business owners. So I'm excited to have you on the show, excited to talk about all things tech. So mate, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Thanks.
Naturally, we always start this conversation with a little bit about you, a little bit about your background and why tech, right? So tell us who you are, where you've come from, and what led you to be where you are today.
Wow, where do we start? How far back do you want to go? Always been a techie at heart, so cool. Even from a young age, always gravitated towards technology in the early days of computers, and had an Amiga 500 as one of my first computers. So for those of you who are old enough to know what one of those are, and obviously Commodore 64 most people would know, and always been a tinkerer, so gravitated into the field, studied it at uni, did information systems, which was one of the first degrees that was both a combination of, tech and business. So there was subjects like industrial relations, taxation, accounting, law, all mixed into a tech degree. So that was, I think, one of the catalysts and early drivers for me getting into business. Then moved into the corporate world. So worked for financial institutions, always in the IT teams, project management, infrastructure solutions and the like. And then 2009 started the business, so about 15 years ago. And here we are today.
And so let's go from day one. You mentioned the Amiga, but who was your influence? Were your parents into tech? Were they technologically advanced, or was it your cousins, your brothers and sisters? Tell us more about that.
So parents are first generation migrants and were cleaners, so they weren't the influence, although very, very supportive of everything I did. And I think that was one of the things. They didn't get the opportunities that we do today, so they saw that there was a spark in me that was interested in tinkering. So for example, my parents would bring home things from cleaning as part of the work they were doing. They were office cleaners. And sometimes people would throw out like a broken typewriter or a broken keyboard or whatever it is. So Dad would bring it home, and then I would pull it apart and figure out what was going on in it and put it back together. And I think that sort of was part of my nature, where I was curious. And I think that sort of gravitated and led into technology from there. So as soon as I got given the opportunity to work on an actual computer, I just enjoyed it and followed suit.
And that must make them so proud. As first gen immigrants, I too am a child of a first gen immigrants, and being able to make the most of an opportunity they've come here with and utilize something that they are really not familiar with, right? Yeah. Is something that definitely would make them proud. And I presume it's something that you're quite proud of too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's not until you do something like this and reflect that you do feel proud. And I'm sure Mum and Dad are proud as well. Yeah. But I think I am proud, and I think I know that they are proud. So yeah.
Awesome. You come from a big family?
No, I've got two older sisters, so 3 kids, family of 5, but not super huge. However, Lebanese background, so extended family is big.
Very extended, yeah.
And I'm married to my wife, Bernadette, who's one of 8 kids, so she's from a very big family, so obviously, big extended family.
And so then give us a little bit of an insight into the journey around. Naturally, sure, I appreciate you studied tech at university, then you went into some roles in financial services. What was the defining moment that had you go, I want to do this for myself, I want to create something new and fresh? What did that look like for you?
So it was a bit of a gradual move into the business. It was gradual, then it was sudden. So gradual in the sense that I was finding that we had friends and family who ran small businesses, and on weekends and after hours they would call up, or they'd reach out to their network and say, who do you know that can help out with a computer or an IT issue? Most of the family and friends would refer them to me because I was the only one that was a techie. So then after work, I'd go and help them out. And on weekends, I'd go and help them out. And then they would refer me to their friends and family. And then it kind of snowballed. So it snowballed to the point where most of my after hours and most of my weekends was consumed with assisting other businesses. Now, some of them were I was charging for the services, others was just favors, but I could see that there was a lot of potential and it was building up momentum. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing manager at the time in the corporate world who I had a discussion with him and said, this is what's happening and I'm thinking of quitting. And he said, well, how about I do one better and I let you work part-time to build up your business. Completely unheard of today, completely unheard of generally. I took him up on that offer, so I went to 3 days a week, and the other 2 days I continued to work on the business. And then to the point where those 2 days were then full, and then I decided to go, okay, I'm going to run it full time, which was around the time of the GFC. So interesting time to start a business, but yeah, it worked out well.
And you still catch up with him to this day?
No, unfortunately lost touch with him after a little bit after I left. We kind of kept in touch for a little and then lost touch with him after that. But yeah, still an amazing influence, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that opportunity. So to clarify, from what it sounds like, it definitely started as a repair sort of service. You know, you were coming in trying to fix things. Take us on the journey now, because HDIT is not just a repair joint, right? Yeah, correct.
Tell us a little bit about, obviously, naturally what you guys do, but how that evolved to be what it is now.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the second part. So what do we do now? We are basically a managed service provider that supports small to medium businesses in the 20 to 200 seat space. And we take care of the end-to-end technology. So it could be anything from day-to-day support, call up, hey, my computer's not working, I need help, all the way through to cybersecurity, cloud migrations, technology roadmaps, and I guess problem-solving plans for business. So looking at their business problems and putting a technology solution layer on top of that. So that's what we do today. And we're a team of about 25 to 30 staff, and continuing to grow on that side of the business. What kind of led to that and what was I doing in the early days? It was break-fix work, but there was always that underlying layer of customer service and just making sure the customer above all, making sure that they're taken care of no matter what. And then also just making sure that we're sort of got a business problem hat on, and that came from what I was doing in the corporate world. Everything was problem solving. Everything was, what's the business case? What are we trying to achieve here? And then putting that layer on. And then when you apply that to small businesses that don't have that, it was resonating quite strongly to them, and they were, getting a lot of value out of it. And then I was feeling rewarded because I was seeing the value that they were getting out of it. So the business has obviously come a long way since, and we don't do any break-fix work anymore. It's all managed services, but the underlying theme of exceptional customer service and long-term partnerships and problem solving, that's always there, and it's built into our core values.
And I guess a lot of people, when they think managed services, they think probably just generic help desk sort of business. Cybersecurity, people, I would say a lot of business owners out there still don't really understand the breadth of what cybersecurity looks like and how far it can go into your operational procedures. But out of interest, would you have a rough percentage on what your business looks like from a, managed services to cybersecurity to business management solutions? What does it look like for you?
Ooh, it's hard. As a rough estimate, I'd say 60% of it is pure just managed services.
Okay.
And then probably 10 to 15% cybersecurity. And then on top of that, you've got things like project work, so migrations, technology improvement plans, that sort of thing. And then obviously you've got a layer of just procurement services, so hardware, software, just general supply.
Yeah, because interestingly, cybersecurity, we can touch on cybersecurity and how, I guess, intertwined or overlapped that is with managed services in general, right? Yeah. So I appreciate it's quite hard for you to even give us a percentage on that. But the thing I find most interesting is many businesses don't fully comprehend what it is that you mentioned there. And it's probably a little, if I can say, a little bit undersold from you, I think. The business problem solutions, overlaying technology to help them with the business problem. It sounds like it's a pretty small percentage of what you do. Do you think that's because people don't come to you with that problem thinking you can solve it? Or is it something that's under-marketed? Or what's your thoughts there?
So you're talking about the problem-solving side or the cybersecurity side?
The problem-solving side.
So I think they don't really understand it's hard for them to comprehend that there is a technical solution for the problem. I think that's step one, because often they just see that they're doing a process or a procedure, or they've got a business challenge, or most likely an inefficiency in the business. And they just don't understand that there is, that technology can help them improve that, make them more efficient, make them more productive. So our mission as a business is keeping people productive, and we make sure that is communicated well within our team, and everyone understands it, lives and breathes it, and we communicate that to our customers too. Why? Because if we relate everything to keeping people productive, whether or not it's getting them back to work when their computer's got a problem, or showing them a better way to do something with technology, get more hours back in their day or get more capacity back in their business or whatever it is, then that all relates back to keeping people productive, and that's what we get rewarded from doing, and that's what we enjoy doing. So from answering your question, I think it's just more of an education piece, and that's a big part of what we do. And more so in the last couple of years, we've really made that switch towards education and showing snippets of use cases and scenarios where technology has helped a business in anything, to get business owners or people within business thinking about their problems and how they could potentially solve them with technology. So it's, a lot of it's just education, because as I said, they just don't know that technology exists to help them out.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was asserting, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't really go and seek the help to improve a service or improve a process, because this is just how we've done it. She'll be right.
Yep.
And they just continue going on. But what I love about your mission in keeping people productive is, and I know we're getting philosophical here, but maybe you've given this some thought when you built this mission. Productive changes.
Yep.
Productive changes year on year. If people aren't using ChatGPT now, and I hate bringing up AI at times because everyone chats about AI, but it changes what productive looks like.
Yep.
A productive person can now accomplish so much more through the use of technology.
Yep.
Because they're using technology. Without technology, they can't do half of what they were doing previously. So keeping people productive is inherently overlaying technology to allow them to do that.
Yep.
And I love that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it is definitely something, exactly what you said, covered it off perfectly. But it's making sure that there is that understanding that you can get so much more out of what you're doing. Or if it's the other way inclined, where you just want to free up your time so that you've got better work-life balance or more time with your family or whatever it is, then technology is there to support both ways. So I think it's, again, that education side of things and making sure we keep that as part of what we do, is keeping people productive.
Perfect. And so then coming to the cybersecurity conversation, and I guess certainly how it's intertwined with managed services, are you starting to find businesses are more interested or more engaged around the conversation?
Yeah, it definitely shifted over the last probably 4 to 5 years. I think it's now starting to become commonplace and just acceptable that they need to have a level of cybersecurity within their business. I think the complacency is becoming less and less, and people saying, my business isn't at risk and I'm not going to get hacked. That's kind of going. I think that there's been a lot of enough noise in the media and enough real use cases for people to go, okay, well, this is real. And I think, as you touched on it earlier, I know I sort of split out cybersecurity as a separate offering, but it's not really. It is built into managed services all the way through. You can't really provide managed services without a layer of cybersecurity. And from a risk perspective, from our side and from our customer side, we just wouldn't do it. There's certain risk protection products and services that we build into managed services that are mandatory. They're not even optional. So it is a big part of it, and it is good to see that businesses are coming around.
And ultimately, as the mission says, keeping people productive.
Yeah.
If you don't factor in cybersecurity, then there's going to be an element where you're down potentially.
Correct.
Whether it's a ransom, whether it's a denial of service, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So naturally, you're going to need to factor that in. Now, where do you think cybersecurity is going? Because naturally, I appreciate that's a big question. Naturally, it continues to evolve, but where do you think it's going? Are more and more businesses getting serious about it, or are they just opening up the conversation? Because even at, using rough percentages, 10% seems like a pretty small percentage of the business, right? Do you see that as a growth area for the business? And what does, for you, cybersecurity on its own look like?
Yeah, good questions. Is it a growth area? Definitely. Is it becoming more common and core to businesses, absolutely. And I think there's been a couple of things. One, the cases out in the media, definitely. I think two, the government frameworks that are available, like the Essential 8 framework, which really simplifies it and makes it understandable for businesses. I think that's a key part of it. And I think when we do communicate and have a chat to our customers and prospective customers, cybersecurity is often around the center of the conversation. They understand risk as you do, and businesses don't. Well, they want to minimize their risk as much as possible, and therefore they want to make sure that they're ticking all the boxes on their side and being able to sleep sound at night going, okay, I've done everything I can and I know I'm in capable hands to make sure our environment and our business is protected. So yeah, there's still a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity coming from that.
And so from your perspective, when you look at that 10% being cybersecurity, is that purely sort of consulting around the Essential 8, or are we talking penetration testing? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, it could be anything. So Essential 8 is a big part of what we do. We do Essential 8 gap analysis and then remediation all the way through to make sure you're compliant with typically maturity level 1 for small to medium businesses. But it could be anything like making sure that you've got a managed detection and response solution in place to make sure your environment is monitored 24/7. So you're seeing what's lurking in the background and making sure that there's a cyber threat analyst that's responding to it. It could be things like putting in a firewall, making sure that the firewall is detecting any traffic going in and out of your network and alerting and blocking anything that's potentially malicious or is malicious. So it really does vary. So, and then there's even some things around sort of compliance side of things. So, making sure our customers are aware that they need an incident response plan, making sure they're aware that they need an AI policy, things like that, acceptable use policy. So we help them out with that as well.
Okay, I think there's a few things that I want to sort of like get some super clarity on it and sort of simplify it for our listeners. Let's start with Essential 8 if you can.
Yep.
I'd love for us to dive into the Essential 8 and sort of explain to the listeners what they are. Naturally, it's a term that's thrown around quite fluidly,
yep.
And it is it's a fantastic framework that the government's put together. But whether people understand it is a different story. So can you take us through a little bit about the Essential 8?
Yeah, you're going to test me on the 8, aren't you?
You can breeze through it if you like.
No, that's all right. So what I normally explain is that 4 out of the 8 are fairly easy to achieve. Then the other 4 require a technology solution or a layer or somebody with technical skill set to implement it. Now, the 4 side that are relatively easy are patching applications, patching operating systems, so making sure your Windows Mac environment is up to date, making sure that applications that run on that Windows Mac environment are up to date. So that's 2. Backup is another one that's relatively easy to implement. Most people can do it. And the 4th one is going to come to me, but there is another one that's relatively easy, but I'll go through the 8. So you've got then admin access control. So that's making sure that general users of the machines aren't administrators and can't run applications that could cause problems. So whether or not they like accidentally or intentionally try to run something. So accidental is most common scenario, obviously. We have to assume people aren't malicious in the organization. Mm-hmm. But say, for example, they download Spotify and they think it's Spotify. It looked like it's from a reputable website, but it wasn't. They come to run that application and it's got a virus embedded in it, for example. It's just a silly example, but that's what we're trying to protect with admin access control, right. Making sure that not everybody can run and execute programs that could be malicious. Then you've got Office macro control, which is basically hackers are quite smart and they embed malicious viruses and code within applications that they know most people will use day to day. So Word files, Excel files, that sort of thing. Then they send it as an attachment, usually in a mass spam, or they impersonate somebody's domain or their account, knowing that they're likely to catch somebody out by double clicking on what is seemingly an innocent Word or an Excel file. So that's those ones. What else have we got? We've got app whitelisting, which is basically saying that your organization typically knows what applications they use day to day. So whether it's Word, Excel, it might be the Windows calculator, it could be a few, like it's usually a handful of applications that you use day to day. Anything outside of that is probably going to be unauthorized, therefore probably going to be a risk to your business. So app whitelisting says, okay, let's define what the business applications are. Let's make sure only those applications can run. Anything outside of that is automatically blocked. if you do need to run one of those applications, then you can request approval to get that application authorized. It goes through a check and then gets authorized if it's allowed. Then you've got vulnerability scanning. So making sure that the environment is constantly scanned for any vulnerabilities that can come up from, out-of-date firmware, out-of-date hardware, out-of-date software, could be a number of things, and just making sure that critical vulnerabilities that get detected are remediated very, very quickly. So I think if I covered the 8 or I missed one.
Yeah, and look, regardless of what I would say is I think there are a number of businesses out there who would fall short in, as you said, at least 4 of those.
Yeah.
Even backups to some degree is an easy thing to facilitate, but many don't necessarily undertake.
Yeah.
And whether it's a cloud backup or whether it's an off-site backup is a completely different conversation.
Correct.
So naturally, it's a great framework, but one which, if it's not necessarily reviewed or followed regularly, then it's something that could open up a few gaps.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about HDIT. How long have you been in business? How many people? How are we looking?
Yeah, so about 15 years, almost 30 staff. I think we're up to about 27 of the last count, give or take. And we've got, I guess our team is set up in a way that we've got our service desk, which is majority of our team. We've got our project team, which delivers projects. They're dedicated to that. And we've obviously got the back of house team, which is admin and finance and HR and sales and the likes. We've got account managers that make sure that we maintain a good, solid relationship and partnership with our customers. Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, awesome. And what would you say the number one factor for your success has been?
I think it's, as I mentioned earlier, that strong focus on customer service, so customer above all, which is our number one core value. And I think also making sure that we've never been in for a quick buck or a quick win. So what I mean by that is that we've got a core value which is correct solutions, solutions focused, I should say, which basically means that we make sure that we're presenting the customer with what is right for them, not what is going to be the one with the biggest margin or the one that's going to make us a bonus or whatever it is. So when we're presenting solutions A and B, we'll always make sure that we're recommending the right one, no matter what the benefit is on our side. So I think that's been a big part of it, because it really presents to the customer that we're there for a long-term partnership. We're not there to churn and burn, and that's why we've had customers for several years, and we've been in business for as long as we have.
Perfect. And I guess on the back of that, what would you say is one of the key issues in today's business world that you think needs improving or changing?
Oh, it's a tricky one. I think we've covered a little bit around cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
I think cybersecurity and cyber risk needs to become second nature and embedded in a business, just like businesses should mostly know that they need business insurance of some sort, even if it's just like public liability and all that sort of stuff. I think cyber risk insurance and just cybersecurity in general needs to become embedded in businesses, and it should just become part of day to day. I think that's a big one. I think the other challenge is obviously AI. I think understanding how that's going to fit into every business and how businesses are going to work with AI. And I say work with because I don't foresee AI replacing people. I see it keeping people productive and boosting their productivity and making them more efficient. But yeah, I think everyone is grappling with that at the moment. It feels like there's a bit of a race and everyone feels like they're behind. But from what I understand, from what I'm speaking to people, everyone's in the same boat. There's a lot of confusion. And yeah, I think the big thing that's going to change is that there's going to be clarity hopefully coming around the corner on how AI and the likes fits into business.
Perfect. I mean, it's almost as if I requested you to say that about cyber insurance, I guess. But what I will say is it's not just about insurance. It's certainly about risk management. And reviewing cyber risk in general is what is super important moving forward, 2025 and beyond, most certainly. I'm super pleased to see in the last few years that there's been various internal IT managers who have started to open up their minds to getting. I appreciate we invest quite a lot of money into cybersecurity, but it can still happen. Yeah. So sure, cyber insurance is just the last stage of that, I would say. cyber insurance aside, let's chat about AI. Is it something you guys do? Do you help with sort of the consulting piece and the implementation of AI?
Yes. So far, we focus mainly on Microsoft Copilot.
Okay.
Why? Because we initially started looking at, okay, let's look at specialized AI implementations where a customer has a specific use case and they want to build an AI solution or an AI agent to address that use case. There's a couple of things with that. One, we found that, again, that confusion was kicking in and they weren't really sure what they could and couldn't do, and getting the right skill set to, I guess, pull that all apart and make sure we have a cost-effective solution was very, very challenging. Then what we were finding is when we were presenting a tailored solution, like a custom solution, versus something like Copilot, which is fairly generic and covers most of the Microsoft suite and it's just a little bit of AI sprinkled everywhere, customers were seeing more value in that. And the reason is because we're on this journey still where people are still trying to understand how and when they can use AI. They found that they could see the value in Copilot and just educating their workforce in a less steep gradient was more helpful than going, here's a Ferrari of an AI solution and then not potentially getting the full value out of that. Right. So yeah, it's more like diluting that value across the organization rather than getting a lot of value out of a tiny little slither of a process within the organization.
I feel like it does need to be a staged approach.
Yeah, definitely.
Most certainly.
Definitely.
I will say I'm so over hearing people talk about AI.
Yep, I know, so am I.
Everything is AI. And I recently sat in on a pitch and it said, this system is backed by AI. What exactly?
Yeah.
What exactly of this is AI? Mm-hmm. And I think for those who understand probably would scratch a little bit further and go, okay, well, this isn't really AI. This is just a few workflow sequences that are equaling one thing to another. That's not AI. No. Now, naturally, we can sit here and talk about large language models and certain listeners may not know what that necessarily is, but is there a way that you can really dumb down AI to some degree and sort of talk about the various different layers? Because you mentioned AI agents and many would have no idea what an AI agent is or how it could assist. And this is largely why you've correctly said a lot of your clients are probably just going, look, let's just start with Copilot first. Let's roll this out into the business. And then as and when that starts to kick off, we'll look at something more specialized.
Yeah. It's a difficult one because I'm going to put my hand up. I'm not an AI expert, but I will try my best. So in the sense of what we're talking about is generative AI, so large language models, the likes of ChatGPT, which I'm sure nearly everybody has seen now. So when we're talking about it from a business perspective, you can look at technologies like ChatGPT if you want to help with, say, help me generate a marketing strategy or a policy on ABC or whatever it is. It's going to give you that text-based content and save you hours and hours and hours of time. Then you've got the likes of Copilot, which leverages that technology but applies it within your Office applications. So when I say Office applications, I'm talking Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, etc. And some simple use cases that you see in Copilot is, hey, summarize this long email thread for me in just to say 3 sentences so I don't have to read 20 emails. Also draft an email reply for me, things like that. Now, you can also go one step more advanced where it can convert a very text-heavy Word document into a PowerPoint presentation with images and headings almost ready to present. So again, saving hours in that work. Agents, on the other hand, can do a specific task. So for example, if you have, I'm trying to think of a scenario. Say you've got a process where somebody gets a sales order comes in, purchase order comes in, and then they grab that information out of the purchase order and then they enter it into their internal system to be processed. An agent can do that process. No matter what format the PO comes in, no matter how it's done, it can sort of handle that repetitive process with a layer of intelligence to it, in the sense that if there's things that aren't exactly where they should be, so the PO number's not in the exact same box that says PO and the details maybe are worded slightly different, it can apply that intelligence layer and still run with it, just like a human would. It's probably a terrible example, but the difference between an agent versus a general AI is that the agent is designed to do a specific task, and it can extend beyond that. It can do like the whole task of a salesperson, including making outbound calls, including doing whatever it is. So yeah, that's hopefully helped out in explaining the difference.
That was great. That was perfect. And I think what you've perfectly identified for us to make a point on is, I think the adoption of AI will only increase as and when business owners get clearer on where it is that they can use an AI agent in a particular format.
Correct. Yeah.
Right now, it's just so foreign to many.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. I think there are definitely a few businesses utilizing it. We are internally, and it has helped our processes dramatically. It's certainly of value, but Copilot is definitely the first place to start. But I also see there are a number of Microsoft users who don't even use Copilot.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
I wouldn't know what the specific percentage is. Do you know what the percentage is of
Copilot is very, very small at the moment. Not enough. Mainly around education. People just don't know what it can and can't do. And really, a lot of what we've been doing over the last 3 to 4 months is Copilot education, lunch and learns, webinars, you name it, just to try and give people a high level view of what Copilot is and understanding what it is. But now we're getting more into the nitty gritty of real life demos, showing them examples on screen, asking them for scenarios that they would think that they could use Copilot, and then running through real life examples. Nice. And now that's starting to resonate more, because they're starting to say, okay, well, I get that what you've just showed me can save me an hour in my day. And the adoption is now starting to pick up a little bit.
And are you finding people are looking at Copilot and then trying and migrating over to Microsoft 365 from a Google Suite type arrangement? Or is it more so that you're dealing with Microsoft clients already who haven't used or capitalized on Copilot?
Yeah, we support both Google and Microsoft clients. We're not seeing people switch purely for Copilot yet. I think maybe over time that will be the case. But mainly people are switching because Microsoft's cybersecurity policies and stack behind it is a little bit stronger. But yeah, from that Copilot side, not yet. I think that'll come.
And I think that's so easy to step over. That's something we advise clients on, very, I guess, briefly. But do you want to sort of touch on that briefly in terms of, I guess, the difference between Microsoft's policies on cybersecurity versus Google?
Yeah. Look, they're both strong, and Google's definitely getting a lot better. What we do find, though, is that Google came from a consumer-first approach, so they were not really business-focused first, and then they bolted on business-grade services. Microsoft came from enterprise and filtered down to small business. So a lot of the functionality we're getting as small to medium businesses was available in enterprise, and has kind of been simplified and refined down to be able to be applied to a small to medium business without needing a team of 50 IT people. Can they both achieve the same results? I'm going to say no, because we've compared. And Google almost gets there in terms of, say, for example, meeting the Essential 8 fully. It almost gets there, and you could work around it a little bit. Whereas Microsoft, we know we've got everything we need to be able to tick every single, one of the controls in the Essential 8, just as an example. But as I said, they're both pretty good. If you're on one or the other for whatever reason, because your business suits it better, or your team are more used to working with one suite over the other, then I think it'll be fine.
And I think it's an interesting way to look at it. When we looked at our business, we wanted a business that was going to scale, and certainly Microsoft just made sense. You definitely feel it, right? Enterprise coming down versus a Google who's very individual focused. So that makes absolute sense. We were talking off air a little bit just about Microsoft and Apple.
We're going to go there, aren't we?
I have to, only because I'm a Microsoft fan.
Yep.
And we recently purchased a MacBook Pro for the basis that, from a marketing perspective, editing video, blah, 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 it just did not work internally. The whole, using two different machines in the business, something on Word just does not transpose onto Microsoft's Word. That was a real pain in the ass. I just need to know, are you team Microsoft or team Apple?
I am Team Microsoft for everything business related. However, Apple, iPhone, I've tried switching to the Android ecosystem a few times and always revert back to Apple. I just find with my line of work and the way I do things, I need to be able to work quickly, and I can't have fumbling around through apps and settings and all that sort of thing. So if I need to send an email or a message, Apple makes it easy to do that very, very quickly. And I know that Apple's got really good underlying security and privacy and all that sort of stuff built in, and encryption and all that. And from the home environment, because I'm an iPhone user, I find that it flows better in the home environment. So Apple HomePod, Apple TV, that sort of thing. Whereas if I was an Android user, I'd say, yeah, definitely Google for the home environment, because even in the home environment, things like Apple Siri is absolutely atrocious. Just does not understand a word that I say. Whereas Google's a lot better in that sort of thing. So it's hard.
It's a mix.
Yeah, it is a mix.
Yeah, I'll put it out there. I'm definitely an iPhone user, and I couldn't let that one go for sure. No. So I guess we've spoken about key risks within your business. Or your client's business really is cyber risk. Are there any other key risks that you can think of that you sort of either advise your clients on or go through every day? Yeah,
there's a few. So I'm just thinking, you mentioned where's cybersecurity heading for, and I don't think I answered that question, but we're seeing a lot of sophistication with cyber attacks. And just as businesses are leveraging AI to become more productive and more effective, so are the cyber criminals. And they're able to do much more smarter social engineering. And the hackers these days, they're not really hacking into systems. They're logging into systems because they're finding ways to get people's credentials and get access into systems. And once they're in, they're in. So what we're doing in terms of the risk side of things is making sure that businesses are aware of that side of things and understanding that cybersecurity is becoming, cyber risk is becoming more sophisticated, and cyber criminals are becoming more sophisticated. And then addressing also the AI side of it as well. So making sure they've got an AI policy within their business so that their team are not putting sensitive information or intellectual property into public GPTs like ChatGPT. And that's where Copilot helps, because it is far more secure and private. And then the last one, I guess, is just the human risk side, which is still a huge part of risk from a business. And that's things like making sure that there's cyber awareness training, so being able to spot potentially malicious email and impersonated email, or potentially malicious attachment. So educating your team, because they're always going to be the weakest link, unfortunately. And then also making sure you've got protection in place for recoverability, because sometimes it's either accidental or intentional, where somebody's deleted something. It could be a large amount of data within the business, making sure that you're able to recover from that, whether it's deletion or encryption from a virus or ransomware or whatever it is.
The business interruption piece.
Yeah, so it's a lot of that's education and awareness, and then policies in place to back that as well.
A lot of it is education. We see it in our space as well. It's always about educating clients on what can potentially happen, and it sometimes can be doom and gloom and seem like the worst is going to happen right away. But I think particularly in your line of work and in what I see day to day, we see it happening, right? Just last week, we caught up with a partner of ours who we were talking about a client which suffered a deep fake attack. And we talk about social engineering for the listeners at home and what a deep fake attack is. It's someone who is effectively impersonating to be you, utilizing some technology to make a Zoom call or a Teams call with your CFO and entirely impersonate you. And visually look like it's you and speak like it's you. And they were successful in getting $120,000 transferred.
Ouch.
It's pretty hard to distinguish a deep fake attack. And most certainly adding additional measures is what's important there. But we can say this as much as we like, but until clients receive that education, they won't be ready for it. Yeah,
and I think that the cybersecurity technology and the protection suite that we can implement across the board is pretty good, but it's never going to be 100%, and that human element is always going to be your weakest link. And unless everybody's thoroughly educated and aware and always on sort of heightened alert for looking for things like that and spotting the little little things that will be a bit of a telltale that it's not genuine. I think it's going to be hard to be confident that you're protected unless everyone is educated.
Even the small things, like, it becomes really basic around looking at someone's email address. It happens internally quite a bit.
Yeah.
The team get emails from a William Freitas. If you're listening and you're a cyber criminal, like, can you stop? But, it's like William Freitas at, and then not our business name. It's like at google.com or whatever it might be, William Freitas 45 or something, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, our team are well trained on this, but where cyber criminals are getting a lot more sophisticated is changing fonts within email addresses. That's really quite hard to determine the difference. A font between one A font and a certain A font can look very, very similar and quite hard to distinguish. So it's certainly a risk that's going to continue to be here for sure.
Yeah, it is. And there are ways to protect against some of it. The biggest one we see is domain impersonation, where somebody's sending emails as your Confio domain, and it will be exactly the same. So making sure you've got protection in place so that the recipient server blocks it as soon as it sees it, because it's not coming from your Confio email server. Things like that we can implement, but again, if they're getting very smart with fonts, with email signatures, with the style of writing, and AI is helping them get quite sophisticated and make it look indiscernible. Really is hard.
Some great tips there for sure. To finish off, give us your vision for both your personal future as George Hanna, but also the professional future for HDIT. Like, what does the vision look like? Where are you going? What can you see?
Yeah, I think they're quite heavily intertwined. So the business, obviously, I'm a big part of the business, and everything I do is around keeping people productive. We have a vision for the business to service 5,000 seats by the year 2030. So we're at about 1,600 at the moment. So we're going to almost triple the business by 2030. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we're spreading what we can do to more businesses and more people, and to help keep more people productive. So we're on that journey, we're on that growth phase, and we love what we're doing, and we can't wait to help more people.
Perfect. I love that. George, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me again. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
All good. Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.